get started for today. So it's Friday. Couple notes about our schedule over the next few weeks and what's going on here. Okay. So we're going to we've got a few shifts involved, a few things to tell you about. Our presentations, I've removed that requirement from the project. You don't have to present your assignment because we're a little bit short on time. So that class on week 13 is out. We're not going to have class on the final week. You don't have so the exam will not be in week 14. Your exam's going to be in week 13 instead. Okay? I'm going to be away traveling on business for work that week, the final week of class, so your midterm will be the Friday morning of week 13. There'll be no class in week 14. Okay? Do you have other classes after this one on Friday or no? So you're done on Thursday then of that week. Okay? You'll be done a day early. You don't have to wake up and come in Friday morning. So instead of the presentations, the final exam will be August the 7th. Okay? So that's going to be a short week for you because Monday is also a holiday. So you got a 4-day week and then just the exam Friday morning. Ajax and jQuery we may or we may not get to. We'll see. So our rough schedule is this. So today what we're going to deal with is we need to deal with related data. So I'm going to push security back to next week. Okay? That'll still give you a week for implementing the security part in your assignment. But we need to talk about related data because in looking at many of your database diagrams, a lot of you will have relationships between tables in your assignments. And right now, we've looked at doing create, read, update, and delete, but we've only done it within a single table. We haven't looked at how do we, for example, fill a drop down from a lookup table, or how do we show a grid where we're presenting columns from multiple tables. And how do we represent master and child data in a .NET application. So that's what we're going to do today, because that's going to help many of you in your assignment. You're going to need to know how to do those things. So that's what we will deal with today, is related data. We will try to squeeze in a lab, and if I can, I'm even going to try to get the lab done in class time, so it'll be one you didn't take home, you just do before 11 o'clock, hopefully. We'll see how class goes in terms of time. Okay. So that would mean next week we will deal with authentication and security, and then we'll move exception handling down to the end of July to 2 weeks. We'll see whether we have time to deal with Ajax, whether we do a little bit of review, and then your exam is here. Okay. So I'm not too worried if we don't get into Ajax. It was kind of a nice to cover topic. If we get to it, we get to it. If we don't, it's certainly not critical. Michelle?
The exam, is it going to be the way you usually do it, just practically?
No, the exam is actually going to be, it will be open book, but it's actually going to all be question and answer. Okay? It's not really my preferred format. The challenge is I'm away this week. I'm going to meet with the teachers of our sister college in India because we're launching our web program in India starting in the fall, where our students in India can study in India for semesters 1 and 2, and then they come here in summer, and then they study here in Canada with the domestic students for semesters 3 and 4. So we're starting that program. Georgian's already been doing this with a few other programs for several years, and the web program is starting there. So I'm going to be there that week meeting with the faculty, making sure that all the students there are going to learn all the same things as the students here in semesters 1 and 2. So the challenge is if I'm there and I have practical exams in all my classes, I'm not going to be able to do that and get things marked. And I only have the final marks are due the following week. So kind of by necessity, you're just going to get a question and answer exam, because basically you can just do it, you're going to get a grade, you'll basically get your grade right away on Blackboard.
So it'll be like multiple choice?
It will be multiple choice. There may be some other formats to it as well. It will be open book, so you will not have to build. Okay. There will probably be code snippets on there, like what does this code do with choices, or what's wrong, how would you fix this, or what would you add, like a fill in the blank. It will be that type of exam. So similar to the question and answer part of the midterm. Okay. I would prefer to do a practical exam. It's just really not feasible. The other benefit is obviously if I just give you a question and answer, then software configuration during the exam is not a problem, right, if you're not building stuff. you'll still be able to use Visual Studio, and you can still try pieces of code out and use your solutions to answer the questions. That's fine. Okay. So that's kind of the schedule. Related data today, security next week, exception handling review, and then the final exam and no class in the last week. Okay. So what we should do, I'm hoping everybody has a copy of the database running now on their server so you can connect to it. If you do, then we don't have to rebuild or reconfigure the database from last week. I know a few of you have just finally got SQL Server running. If you've got an SQL Server running, you just need to create a new database if you don't have one yet, and then you need to grab the script that's on Blackboard from week, I think it's from last week, from week 8. Down at the bottom, you need to grab that Contoso DB SQL script. You need to download it to your computer, open up Management Studio, and create a new query in your database and run that script, because it will build 4 tables and populate them for you. If you already have the database running, you're good. So then what I want to do is I'm going to open up my solution from last week. I'm going to export it as a template, and then I'll build a lesson 10 solution. So I'll build a new project for this week, but I'll use lesson 9 as my template, so it will copy in all of the files. What I would suggest, actually, if you did the lab, use the files from the lab, because your lab has more code in it and more pages than your in-class files. So if you did lab 2, use your lab 2 solution rather than your week 9 solution. Okay. If you did not do the lab and you did not have a complete solution of lesson 9 from last week, you can grab mine off of Blackboard from the lesson 9 folder. I think I just gave you the link to the GitHub repository. So you can just go to GitHub and you can download the zip file if you need to. Again, if you're working with your own solution, that would be better, because your own solution already has your database credentials in there. If you grab mine off of GitHub, you're going to have to open up web.config and change those credentials so you can connect to your database. So I'm going to open my project from last week. Again, if you did the lab, just work with your lab files. So all I'm going to do with my solution from last week is click File and Export Template. I'll just accept all the defaults here. I'll uncheck that option, doesn't really matter, and I'll click Finish. And this will create a lesson 9 template so I can build a new solution for today, and it will just pull in everything from my lesson 9. So I'm going to create a new project for today. And under Visual C#, somewhere in here, here's my lesson 9 template. So I'll say use this as my template, and I'll just call this COMP2084 lesson 10.
What lesson is this? This is lesson 10 right now?
Yep. So in my solution at the end of class, so last week we basically, over the last 2 weeks, we've built the department page and the department details. If you did the lab, you also have the students page and student details. Okay. So my solution is missing those. So to get it started, I'll just click on debug and start without debugging. Just to get the application up and running in my browser. Again, if you're grabbing mine off of GitHub, you're going to have to redo the database connection in the web.config file because it's set up to connect to my database, not to yours. So this is where we left off the end of class last week before I gave you the lab. So I could see a list of departments. I could add a new department. So we did all this together in class. I could edit it. Or finally, I could delete.
So once you go, like, for a database, yeah, I made the comp one, that's what I wanted.
And did you run this, do you run the database script on it?
It's in there, like, I remember running it last week.
Okay, if you ran it last week, then you don't have to run it again.
Okay.
You should have the tables.
All right.
So if you want to double check and make sure that it's there, if you click on your database and click on tables, there should be 4 tables in the list.
Okay, so I'm under COM, the COM one says tables,
Yep.
and there's 4, like courses, departments, enrollments.
Okay, good. That's what you need. So if you have that from last week, you're good. You don't have to do anything in here. Right? So you should have, I have some additional tables that we'll get to next week, but you should have courses, departments, enrollments, and students.
Okay. So I'm on database.
Yep, so your database is fine, is set up, if you can see it.
Did we do a JavaScript validation with the time of the enrollment date?
The enrollment date is for students, okay?
Did we,
What we should do, I guess I should point that out, because yeah, I did mark your labs.
like,
You
I
know-
got Mark stopped for not having the JavaScript thing, but like, I don't remember learning it other than.
It wasn't JavaScript that you needed, okay? You know what, I will open up those files. If you did not do the lab, then if you go into your lesson 10 folder on Blackboard, I'm going to add the files to my project. I don't have the students pages, but I'll add them. In the lesson 10 folder, whoops, did I not put them up here? Sorry, you know what, they're here. If you go and click on assignments, I attached them to lab 3 in case you don't have them. If you go into assignments, there's a zip under lab 3. Here's studentpages.zip. This has got students.aspx and student details, which we should put in our project. If you did the lab, you have these pages. If you didn't do lab 3, you don't. So I'm going to download these because I don't have them in my project. I just have departments. So I'm going to download this zip folder. So I can right-click my student pages and choose Save Link. I'm going to save them into my lesson 10 folder and then add these pages to my project.
You downloaded this from, oh, that's lab 3.
So it's just, I've just taken the pages that, yeah, you were supposed to do for lab 3 and I've zipped them up. I want to add them into my project for today and then I'll come to your question. So I'm just going to put them right in my project directory where all my other pages are. So it's just a zip. So again, if you did the lab, you don't need to grab my pages. So now I'm just going to take my zip and extract all the files here. I'm just going to choose extract all. I don't want them in a subfolder called student pages. I just want them right in my root directory with all my other pages.
So in lesson 10?
Yep, so just in my lesson 10, I'm going to extract those 6 files. So that will give me these pages. I'll highlight them in blue. Okay. So these 6 pages are what was in the zip.
Yes.
So I've put them in my directory. I need to add them to my project. Putting them in the directory on Windows doesn't automatically add them to the project in Visual Studio. So if I want to add them in,
Are we dragging them right into the lesson 9 folder?
no, put them in your folder for today, your lesson 10 folder.
Yeah, but all the files that you had from lesson 10, you don't bring in the student file, you just take the pages out and put it in that lesson 10 file, right?
You take everything in this zip file
Yeah. You throw it
and throw them in your lesson 10 folder.
Yes.
Okay? So now I want to add them to my project. So all I need to do, if I click on this button on the toolbar, it says show all the files in the project directory. This one right here at the top, the very right. And now it shows me student.aspx and students. And they're both
What?
white. Click this button, show all files. So I'm going to click on student and students. And if I right click and say include in my project, they now get added to my solution
Include.
in project.
Both.
I can turn off this show all files now. And now if I build my solution, the 2 student pages should be part of my project. Oh, I just have to change this line because it doesn't match.
Where do we, I'm just trying to find where we type in the database thing again.
In web.config.
Web.config.
So I've got to change these couple of lines. So on students.aspx, it now has to say COMP2084 lesson 10. So that matches my other pages. And what did we call it here? Default connection. I have to change.
Okay, so we're changing.
So I'm just clicking on these errors down below because it tells me any place I have an error. So where it says COMP2007 entities, I need to change that
What, default connection?
to default connection. Yep. Because that's the name we used for our database connection in this project. And here also I've got to change that to COMP2084 lesson 10. Adam?
Taking the files out of Git, it comes up as like department details instead of students.
The student files aren't on Git. If you grab my stuff from Git, it only has the department pages, which we built in class last week. The student pages you were supposed to build on your own for the lab. So I'm providing those to you if you didn't do the lab. If you did the lab, you already have these pages in your project. Okay, so any instance at the top, any page that connects to our database, we need the name of our current solution.models.
My thing's still red when I type it in.
What does the error message say, Scott?
Default connection cannot be found.
So in your web.config file, you don't have a connection called default connection.
Oh, I haven't.
So this is what you had to do for the lab. So you had to have your students page with edit and delete links and an add link. So I'm coming to Mackenzie's question. Right. Not only are these fields required, one of the things I did, first of all, several of you left out the enrollment date. Okay, the enrollment date field needs to be here for adding and editing. But I was able to crash many people's because I could do this. Okay, and then I'd get an error saying it wasn't a valid date. Now, there's a few ways of validating. A few people just added type equals date or text mode equals date. That only works in Chrome. That's not, that attribute won't work in Firefox or Internet Explorer. So how did I get this? A few people did it correctly. How can we properly validate to make sure that we're actually getting a proper date?
Well, regular expression.
We could do something simpler than a regular expression.
Validate.
That's what we'll do it. So we could just use a range validator. We specify that the type is date and just give it a minimum and an arbitrarily high maximum. That will make sure it will work in all browsers, and that will ensure that we're getting a proper date from the user.
So when I was doing this, I was looking through the requirements. Nowhere did it say I needed an input field for this. And so, so then I was sitting there thinking, well, if they're signing these people up when they're enrolling, then that means the enrollment day is going to be today's date. So I always just had it setting today's. I had it hard coded, so remove all forms of human error and set it up so it would match today's date.
Well, you could, except that means the enrollment date is always going to be when you put somebody in the system, which may or may not be the case, right? Maybe someone sends in their paperwork, but it's entered in the system later.
Yeah, but they're not officially enrolled.
Yeah, okay.
That was my thoughts around it. It's like it was a little ambiguous going through it.
Okay, I thought all fields are required would mean all fields are included. So okay, point taken, maybe I should have been a little more clear about that. Fair enough.
And that you needed validation on the enrollment
Even if I was wrong, I should have done bonus points because I was going above and beyond my functions.
date. Like, I didn't know you had to validate the enrollment date. Like, I didn't even cry during this class.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
good.
legitimate.
Well, I assume, I mean, most people attempted at least to validate it as a date because I at least got an HTML5 attribute, right? If I gave you the form, why would I allow you to put in junk data, right? If I'm going to have you build it, I'm going to have you build it right. So, okay, I'll take some of the responsibility for not being completely clear. You guys have to take some of the responsibility because if you're not completely clear, what should you do? Is check, right, is check. So I'll take some of the responsibility, but if I make things not clear, the time to go, oh, is that what you wanted, is before you submit it, so we can clarify it and get it right. Sure. Okay, so this control, this doesn't really work. If you add text mode equals date, it really won't require the user to enter a proper date. If I take this out, watch, I'll take out my range validator for a minute. I'll just use text mode equals date and type equals date. I'm not going to be forced to enter a date.
Good date time, not now. That's a good one.
That those checks don't actually work. I think the type equals date will work in Chrome. I'm pretty sure it'll work in Chrome.
To not get the date to show up, do you just do convert to date? Or, sorry, not to get the time to show up?
I will show you how to do it. So this works in Chrome, but it only works in Chrome. doesn't work in other browsers, which means you can't rely on it, right? If that's all we do, specify type equals date, somebody can crash it in other browsers. So also for those of you who are religious Chrome users, make sure you test your stuff in other browsers.
Wait, so is that WebKit specific or is that just Chrome specific?
I don't know the answer to that, Brandon, to be honest with you. Okay. So the range validator will write the jQuery that will work cross-browser. To answer your question, Rachel, about the format, I've just entered it this way. So when I click on edit, I'm not parsing the time. If the time was there, it would show up. But in the script I gave you, there is no time, so all of these records are in the SQL script. So in the script I gave you, I think if we look at the data, I don't think there's any times on there.
Yeah, that's why I was confused when it started giving me times. It's like,
Well, it will be there. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, they're there in the actual grid, but
They were there in the grid, but we used. So if I enter one this way,
hello.
right? So if I don't put a date in and run the query, it doesn't save it.
someone was born a long time ago. You're one.
Database am I connecting to? Sorry, just give me a sec. Make sure what database I'm using. Oh, I'm working locally. Duh. Help if I looked in the right database. So it just saves the date this way. It doesn't save the time here. And in our grid, I just filtered out the time if there was one. Where are students? Using this property, if there was a time in our enrollment date column, we can just add the data format string, and that will specify that it's only a date, and if there is a time value, to exclude it from the list. So those files, these files, the student files are on Blackboard if you want them, if you wanted to use see mine, they're in that zip. So just as clarification, anything else you submit to me for marks, you have to properly validate it, okay? If I forget to say things are required and that's a blanket statement, anything else you give me, so in your assignments, any forms in your labs, I will expect proper validation, right? Don't build forms that users can just put in garbage data and crash them. The .NET validators are really easy to use, so take advantage of them, please. So if you did the lab, we did departments in class, you did students for labs or for the lab, or you now have my pages. So what we want to do is look at courses. So right now we don't have a course page.
Can you just quickly go back to where you validate the
Sure. So that was the validator that does it, highlighted in blue. So our department and our students are kind of self-contained. We can do create, read, update, and delete on both. We want to be able to manage courses today. We're probably not going to do editing. Well, We maybe won't do all of it, but we want to look at the relational part. So I'm just going to open up the database for a minute. Actually, the easiest way to look at our database is through our model that we built. We actually can get a diagram right here. So I'm just going to open up this EDMX file. We used the entity framework to generate this, do this wizard and build the diagram. So here's what our database actually looks like. Pardon? Yeah, so we've dealt with departments on their own. We've dealt with students. Today, the next thing I want to do is build a page for first for viewing the courses. And then we want to build a page that we can add or edit a course. Okay. And when we do that, we also want to include information about the departments. So step one, what I want you to do is add a new web form called courses.aspx. Go ahead and do that now. And your web form should use your master page, so it inherits our header and footer and CSS. So add courses.aspx. Make it all lowercase. And I'll show you what this should look like in a minute. Yep. So the courses page is going to look something like this. Okay, there's a few features here we can leave out. So the first thing I want you to do is just build next thing I want you to do is build a grid that shows the course ID, the title, and the credits. You can leave out the department for now. We'll come back to that. Right? So the course table has an ID, title, and credits. The department name actually comes from a related table. So let's leave that column out for now. Just build a grid with these three columns. Course ID, title, and credits. You don't have to add any paging. Okay? You can just show all the courses in one list. So add an ASP grid view to your page, and then when the page loads, you need to connect to the database, get the list of courses, and bind that list of courses to the grid. So we've already done it a few times. We did it in class together with the departments. Hopefully, most of you did it for your lab on the students page. I now want you to just build a simple courses grid. Okay? So just those three columns. No paging, you can leave out the links for now. Don't worry about delete. Okay, so we're back for part 2. So what we want to build is our course details page. It's going to look pretty much exactly like this one. So if you don't have an add course link at the top of your grid, you'll want to add one. So just put on a simple HTML link, and I'm going to call the new page course details. So make sure at the top of your grid, you just have a simple link going to course details, and then we're going to add a new page to our project, and we'll give it this name. So add a new web form using a master page to your project. Call it course-details, all in lowercase. So we'll get a blank page. I'll just put in a title of course details in the first line. So I'll put on an H1 that says course details. And a little heading that says all the fields are required. So what we want are 2 text boxes and a drop-down list. We need a text box for title. We need a text box for credits that should have the attribute type equals number. So we'll make sure we get numeric input. And then we'll build a drop-down list for the department. So I'll put on 3 divs and 3 labels, and then we'll put on a submit button. And I'll use Bootstrap for styling. And I can't remember how long we made our course title, so I'm going to set the max length property so the user can't give us more characters than our database can hold. So I can just open up my model, click on my title, and if I right click and choose properties, I can see 100 characters is the maximum length in the database. So may as well set 100 as the max length here. So I'll do the same for credits, except I'm also going to add the attribute type. Don't need a max length, but I'll add the attribute type equals number to that. So my second box I'll call TXT credits. Oops, and I forgot my run at equals server in my text box. Good way to crash my page. So for credits, I'll add type equals number. Form now should look something like this. So far, oops, won't look like anything if I don't compile. Once I've added a new page, I've got to compile before I can load that page. So here's what it looks like so far, and we'll get these little arrows. If I put in text, the HTML5 attribute will run. So we need one more form group, and then we need a submit button. So instead of a text box in this one, we want a drop-down list instead. We don't want the user to type a department, we want to make them pick from our list of departments in the database. So we'll create an ASP drop-down list. We played around with these back, I think, in week 3, week 4. So I'll give it an ID of DDL department. and an attribute of run at equals server. Now there are two other properties we need to set. If I looked at one of my drop-down lists from week 3 or week 4, this was all we did. We gave it an ID, we specified run at equals server, and then we just put in a bunch of ASP list items for the options. In this case, we want our data to actually come from a database query. So there's two other properties we need to set. We need to specify, so if this is going to be filled with our list of departments, here's our department table here. What two other attributes do you think we should indicate in our drop-down list? We've given it an ID, we've said it's run out equals server. Here's the model, this is what our table looks like. What should the user see? What choice should they be picked? What column should we use for the options in the drop-down? Yeah, we may as well show them the name. That's really the only meaningful. So we're going to want to show the name, and when they pick a particular department, which value do we want to store when we're saving the new course?
Department ID.
Right, so we're going to use the department ID as the option values, but the department names as the option text. And there are properties of our drop-down for each of these. So we have a data text field. So when we're binding to a query, which column in the query will hold the text to display as the options? So we're going to just call this name. We also want to set the data value field, as Martin said, that's going to be department ID. So the users will see the names of the departments, but when they actually pick one, we're going to store the ID number and save that. So whenever we have a dynamic drop-down, we're going to need those two properties. Okay, so again, Vadim, we'll just talk about your assignment. We were talking about Vadim's tracker. It's sort of a highway toll rate tracker. So you're going to have two related tables, right? You're going to have a list of license of cars with license plates, and you're going to have a related table with trips. So every trip is taken by one car, right? So if you want to log a new trip in your application, if you're going to build a drop-down list, you'll have to use probably the license plate as the data text field, right? You'll pick the license plate, that's what the user will see, but you'll store the license ID, which will be an auto-generated number. So you'll need to set a data text field, data value field. Okay? Few people are doing a recipe tracker, right? So if you're building a recipe and you want to add an ingredient to the recipe, you'll probably have a drop-down list with the ingredient ID here as the value field and the ingredient name as the text field. So the user will see the name of the ingredient, but when they pick it, it will just store the ID. Okay, so those two attributes are what we need for any dynamic, any data-bound drop-down. So the last thing we need is just a save button. So I'll add an ASP button, give it an ID of BTN save. Like all our ASP buttons, it has run at equals server. Our button can just say save. We'll style it like our other buttons, we'll make it blue. And then we want Visual Studio to write the click method for us. So if I just type onClick equals, we'll create a new event. This is one of the biggest reasons why copying and pasting your code from one page to another causes a problem, right? If we do this on the student page and then you copy it, well, Visual Studio won't write the click method in the C#. If you code it on each page, then all of your events, you can create the new events as we go. So we'll create a save click here. And as soon as I do that, notice there's a change in my course details. There's an unsaved change here. I can see because there's a little star. and it wrote the save click for us. Okay, again, just copying and pasting from another form won't automatically generate the click method in here. Matt?
When I'm writing the code, the drop down is always DB for some reason. And it won't do anything.
It won't bring up the code prompt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this happen yesterday or Wednesday in my class.
I have to manually go into the C# code and add the on-click.
Just learning more than everyone else.
Yeah, I do that for my lab every single time.
I have to do that to so many other things too.
So you never get the code prompts, you get them sometimes and not others?
DB as a drop.
Yeah, I had that happen to me the other day on one page, and I made a new page and it worked fine. It has to do something in, I'm just going to go into tools and options for a minute. There are options for code completion. I will have to look. Off the top of my head, I don't know how you stop that from happening. But there should be a way. I'll have to look into it. Sorry, I don't have a quick answer for you on that. So now if I rebuild my solution, my form should be complete, except our drop-down list is going to be empty. So what we need to do now is what? How are we going to get that list? How and when should we get that drop-down list to fill? Yeah, when the page loads, we should fill the drop-down list. We don't need to fill it every time, only the first time the page loads. Because if we fill it again when the user clicks save, we will wipe out whatever they've chosen. It will rebuild the list. And the list will persist, so we only want it to run when the page loads. So we'll go into our code. We'll reference our database model. If it's not post back. Right? So we'll enter our reference to our, so the name of your project.models. So any page that uses the database will need that reference. So I'm going to create one other function in between these two. Doesn't really matter what order they go in. The code's not procedural. So I'm going to write a get departments function. Will basically be the same as the get departments function we used on the departments page. So when our page loads, if it's not posted back, so the exclamation mark meaning not. So if it's not posted back, we'll get the departments. So if loading for the first time, fill the department drop down. So in our get departments, we're going to do basically the same thing that we did on this page. We're going to use our default connection. We're going to write a simple query to get the list of departments. The code will be almost identical. The nice thing is filling, so here we're filling a grid from our query. Here we want to fill a drop down, but the code for doing either is basically identical. So populating a drop down and populating a grid uses the same C# code. So we'll connect. So we'll use our default connection. So we'll create a new connection, and with our using command, as soon as that curly braces are closed, the connection is automatically disconnected. We'll get the department list. Whoops. We also should probably add some sorting. We should sort our list alphabetically. If we're going to fill items into a drop-down list, they should probably be alphabetical. It's going to be easier for the user. So to do that, we just add an order by right here. Order by D dot. We'll order by department name, so they're alphabetical. So that just generates an SQL order by clause. So this time we will bind to the drop-down list. So just like with our grid, we set the data source property. And we call data bind. If this was a radio button list or checkbox list, code is identical. They're all considered list controls in .NET, so we can fill them the exact same way. A grid view, a drop-down list, a radio button list, checkbox list. In fact, I'm just going to open up the department's page for a minute so we can compare. So here's how we did it on our department grid. Connected, ran the query, set the data source, and called data bind. Exact same thing. The only differences are here. We added the order by name to change the sorting, and we're connecting to a different type of control. But the mechanics and the process is identical.
It's not recognizing default function.
Then you probably are missing the reference at the top, right? Because the connection, it lives inside of here. The connection specified here in this file, which is inside of the models. So you just need to reference it. So if we refresh now, our query should run. That's interesting. That's a lot of departments.
I'm getting done.
Oh, I have. Well, I better look at my department table. I don't want that many departments. So in the original database, I think I just gave you the first 4. Yeah, the rest are duplicates. So I'm going to get rid of all but the original 4. So there's my list, and it's sorted alphabetically. Now remember, our query, it selects everything from the department table, so it's got the department ID, the department name, as well as the budget field. Right? Our query has all of those, but by specifying the text and value fields, we're telling .NET which fields go where in the dropdown. So if I view the source, so we're using the department name as the text field and the department IDs as the values. So when we save that course, we'll be saving the selected department ID along with the course title and course credits. If it's blank, I'm guessing your function is probably not getting called. Do you have an exclamation mark here? It's got to be if it's not posted back. Was that it? It's okay. I've left that exclamation mark out, oh, a good 700-800 times.
Experience just tells you where you're going. So
Yeah.
this is actually fix it.
Okay. So anywhere in your assignment where you're going to have an input form and you need to save related data, you probably will want a drop-down list, or it might be a radio button list, checkbox list, depending on what your data structure is like and what makes sense for the user. This is how you'd fill it. Okay. And for a radio button list or checkbox list, they actually have the same properties, data text field and data value field. And we would bind them up the same way. Run the query, set the data source, and call data bind.
Since you're grabbing the department IDs from the database, is it possible to put a select option on
Sure, good question, right? If I don't pick a department, it's going to default to economics. So what we should probably do, what we want to do is after we run the query to populate the grid, we can then insert a new option at the top of the list and maybe give it a value of 0. So that's a good idea, but then what we also need to do, right now we don't need any validation, right? Because the user's forced to pick. So we're going to need a range validator to make sure when the user clicks save that the value of this control is greater than 0. Okay, so I think that's a good idea. So here's how we do it. Thank you for raising that issue. So let's add a default option to the drop-down after we fill it. We don't want to add the default option first because calling data bind would wipe it out. This gets rid of whatever's in the drop-down already. And actually, the one other thing I should point out, this drop-down is still sticky, right? So if I submit the form and the page reloads, right, the choice I've made stays. It doesn't get wiped out like it would on a PHP page. So we need to create a new list item. I'll call it default item equals new list item. And we want to supply both a value and text for it. So our text could maybe say select. And let's give it a value of 0. So we're creating a new list item. Oops, those are both considered strings. So I need quotes around both. And now we'll take our drop-down list. It has an items property dot insert. And Visual Studio says, okay, what index, where in the list do you want to put the new item? So what position, where should that option go? Right, so that's what position is that numerically? Right, so at position 0, and then it says, okay, what's the new item? So that's our default item variable. So we're creating a new option with the value of 0, text and select, and then we're inserting it into our list at the first position. So if you want to have a default choice, this would be how we would do it. And you can make the text say anything you like. So if we load course details now, yep, well, I just want to make sure that it actually works first. Okay, so now we have this option first, and if we view the source, it's got a value of 0.
What is the 0 besides the 4?
Well, we have to provide a value as well. So this is the text of the new option, and this is the value. Notice when I view the source, it says value of 0
The new list item?
of the new list item. Okay, so now we want to add a validator, because right now I can submit the form, and it will, I don't want to save that as a department. I want to force the user to pick one of the departments. So we can do this. So after our drop down, we can add an ASP range validator. So what we'll do, we probably want to make it higher than 4. Right now I have 4 departments, but then if I add another one, so we'll pick some arbitrarily high maximum, and we'll make the minimum 1. So our control to validate is DDL department, right? We want to check the drop-down list. The type is going to be an integer. And it's important we specify that, otherwise it will default to a string. So our minimum value is 1. Whoops, sorry. So minimum is 1. Maximum, we can probably set it like 1,000. And then our error message, we can just say it's required. And I'll use the label danger class to show a message with a red background in bold white font if that validator gets triggered. Now this type equals integer is really important. I'm going to show you what happens if we leave it out. Our validator will work sometimes and not other times without that attribute type equals integer. So that's critical. Okay, so we need to set all 7 properties on this, quite a bit. Let's check it now. So now if I click save, it tells me it's required. As soon as I pick, that goes away. Okay. Except, okay, I'm surprised that did, okay, I have type equals integer. If I want to show you what happens if I leave that out. So I've set the minimum as 1 and the maximum as 1,000. But without having type equals integer, watch what happens. Okay. When I click save, it catches it, right? Value 0, it's below 1. When I pick 1, sorry, English is 1, I think. It allows me to pick English, but it doesn't allow me to pick the others. Why does it not allow me to pick any option except English? Here are the values.
Binary?
You're close. what data type would it be treating those values as if I don't specify that it's an integer? What would the default likely be? Right, it treats it as a string. So value 2 is considered as a string greater than 1,000, right? Because 2 is greater than the first character, greater than the 1. So if we're checking numbers, it's critical that you say that it's a number. Otherwise, the JavaScript just treats it like a string. And as a string, 2 is considered higher than 1,000. So if our maximum is 1,000 and it's a string, 2 or 3 or 4, anything that starts with anything besides a 1 is going to be considered too high. So that type equals integer is critical to make sure our validation rule works properly. Okay, so now we should be able to write the code on our save button. We've got all the validation, everything's required, we're checking the right data types for numbers, right? I can't submit this with text for credits and without picking a department. So now I should be able to submit this course. Just that nothing happens yet. So we need to go in here and we need to write our save function. It's going to be similar to what you did in your lab for saving a student, similar to what we did in class for saving a department. So we will need to connect. What should we do next once we're connected if we want to save? So we need to create a new course and fill the properties. So we'll create a new course object. Title's going to come from where? Nope. The user's filling out a new form and wants to save that information to the database. Yep, so which object is going to provide the title property? Yeah, the TXT title. So we'll get the title from that text box. We'll get the number of credits from the credit text box. Why are we redlining? Yeah, we're going to have to convert that because credits expects an integer, so we can't save it as a string. And then we want to set the department ID if we choose the selected value, that will give us the value of the option the user picked. So if they picked math, it'll give us ID 2. If they picked engineering, it'll give us department ID 3. Now again, the selected value is always considered a string. Department ID is an integer. We can see as I mouse over. So we're going to have to convert that as well from a string to an integer. So now we've filled the properties we need. So then we'll add our new course to the collection of existing courses. Whoops, this is OBJ. There's our variable that holds our new course. And we'll call save changes. So create a new course in memory, fill each property, and save it. And then we can redirect. So after we're done saving, we'll take the user back to the list of courses. We built that grid earlier today, so our new course should appear at the bottom of the list. So we've done almost all of this before. You did it in the lab, we did it in class last week. The only thing that's new is we now have one value that instead of coming from a text box is coming from a drop-down list. So now you should be able to load your course page, fill it out, click save, and hopefully get a new course in your list. Try it out. So I'm going to try and add a course to my database. So I've got, let's see. So I will add a course, make sure all my validation works. I'm going to add it to engineering and click save. And here's my new course added to my engineering department.
Do you go back to the range validator?
Sure.
So when do we add a department?
Do you get an error? What?
No, it says required even if I pick a department.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing.
Mine goes,
That's why I thought it was the range validator.
So it says required. View the source of your page. Does your drop down, do you have these options? Does it look like that? Are your options the same as those? What are the values?
by value, or is the name of the department.
Your values are the name of the departments. So in your drop-down, you probably set up the data value field as the name. It needs the data value field needs to be the department ID. Do you have that?
I have data value.
Ah, it's data value field, right. So if you don't specify that, it just takes the text field. So it will do a lot for us, but we have to make sure we name the properties correctly, right? Those properties are key.
It's hard when they don't get dropped. When it's just DB. Because I have to type
there's probably a way to correct that. Sorry? You misspelled field, right. Okay, so now you should be able to add one. So most of you, based on your assignments, will need a form that works similar to this one, where when it loads for the first time, you're going to want to fill a drop down, or potentially more than one drop down, depending on what you're building. And then we'll be able to save the drop down value using the selected value property. Right, so in your guys' application, you'll need a golfer. You'll probably need a golfers and a course or date drop down. Right? Dave, on yours, you'll need to pick a team, right? Add players to the team. So this will all be done this way. Are there any questions about the C# here or the ASPX here? There are a couple of other things I want to do today in terms of related data with this page. Two things I want to do with it. Okay. The first one is we'll need to add an edit link here so we can edit a course. And what I want to show you is how, when we edit a course, how do we get the drop down to select the right item? Okay, so here I click chemistry, so I want the department drop down to default to engineering. If I click microeconomics, how do we pre-select? This is actually quite a bit easier in ASP.NET. In PHP, we would have to write a loop and loop through every item and check which one of these matched our current courses department. It's simpler in ASP.NET. Okay, so we'll look at how do we populate the existing choice into the drop-down. And then the other thing we're going to want to do, when we look up a list of courses, I didn't do it on this version, but when we look up a list of courses, kind of the reverse of this, we're going to want to show a grid of child data. We'll want to show all of the students enrolled in that course. So here I've done it from the student perspective. When you edit a student, we can see all the courses they're in. We're going to want that on this page. So we'll show the existing course, we'll show what department it's in, and then we'll add a grid view down below that's filtered and shows all of the students that are also enrolled in that course. Okay, so that's what we're going to do over the next hour. So we'll take a 10-minute break. I know a couple of you are having issues. I can come and have a look. Hopefully 10 minutes will give us enough time to resolve those. Okay, so.